everyone, my name is Kelsey. I'm here with WhyBuy, and today we're going to talk about the Canon R6. So I was an international fashion model. I was doing runway, commercial, magazines all around the world. Places such as South Korea, Japan, all over Europe, Italy, Australia. And while I was doing that, I wanted to record some of my travels. So I picked up the T7i so that I could follow my journey and tell the stories. After several years, I realized that I knew so much about this camera and the ins and outs of the photography industry that I decided to build my own business. But it wasn't until 2019 that I met a group of creatives and really dug into photography and how it can work as a business. I started out in landscape and wildlife photography, but I moved into product and outdoor lifestyle photography, shooting things like athletic brands, travel and tourism companies, hotels, and I quickly realized that I needed to upgrade my camera to something that was more professional, more powerful, and had more technical abilities. Canon had just come out with their first mirrorless system, and I wanted to wait until all the bugs were fixed before purchasing. When I started looking for a new camera, the research was really confusing because it being Canon's first attempt at the mirrorless systems, it had strong competition with Sony. A lot of the reviews that I saw were very positive for both sides, for both cameras, but Canon still had a lot of downfalls. And so I wanted to ensure that the camera that I was purchasing was the best one for what I needed. I initially wanted to go with the R5 because it was the more powerful of the two cameras. I ended up going with the R6 because after visiting the camera store, they had informed me that with what I was doing and what I was looking for, this camera would be powerful enough for what I was doing. When I went to the camera store, I had convinced myself that I needed the R5. Even though I had read research and found out a lot more specs on the R6 was more what I was looking for. The R6 had a higher ISO range than the R5, and that's ultimately why I ended up getting the R6. The Canon R6 is a mirrorless camera, and at the time I bought it, I really didn't know the difference between a mirrorless and a DSLR camera. A couple of reasons that I bought the Canon R6 were for the low light and for the raw video capabilities. A lot of my clients were requiring shoots that were around sunset or sunrise, so I needed a camera that had more flexibility with the lighting. The higher ISO range allowed for less pixelation in the video and photo images. The benefit of having raw video was so that there's a lot more flexibility with what you can do after the video is captured in terms of lighting, color, cropping, all those kinds of things. The main difference between the R5 and the R6 is the R5 had 40 megapixels, compared to the R6, which is only a 20 megapixel camera. A larger megapixel allows you to zoom in closer and have more flexibility with your image. I was prepared to spend $5,000 on the R5. The Canon R6 fit my needs and my clients' needs at the cheaper price tag around $3,000 at the time. So I ended up buying this camera with the kit lens, which was just a 24-105. Because I shoot a lot of outdoor lifestyle photography and videography, the 24-105 allows me to see things that are wider as well as allows a significant amount of zoom to get closer to the subject when I am farther away from something. I already had a bunch of Canon lenses from my previous camera being the T7i. Part of the reason that I wanted to stick with Canon was because of the high quality of their lenses. Because the R6, the R5, and the R series are all new mirrorless systems for Canon, they do have the new lens adapter mount for these cameras specifically, which means that the new lenses that you're getting are more expensive, but they have higher technology in them. There is not so much of a used market for the lenses right now as they are so new. Because the new R6 line was mirrorless, they had a whole new system, the way that the lenses connected to the camera versus the older system. So I do have a converter from my old lenses onto my new camera so that I can continue to use those lenses while having the higher quality of image from my new camera. A lot of the reviews that I was looking at for both the R6 and the R5 cameras was complaining about some overheating issues. I did have it once when it was 40 degrees out, we were shooting. We had already been running the camera for about an hour and a half, and that's the only time that I had the overheating warning. The battery life between the T7i and the R6, camera-wise for photography, I would say is relatively similar. They're not as comparable for video because the R6 has a much higher video quality. Another big difference between the R5 and the R6 is the R5 camera was fully weather sealed. And while I bought the R6 camera, I knew that it had that limitation. However, I had never had problems with the weather sealing in the past. I think the issue would come if you were in a torrential downpour, and that's when the R6 might not be as useful for you. I was able to use this camera in -40 weather, no issues. I didn't have any battery draining issues as well, though I'm sure over an extended period of time, there may be some issues with that. One of the big reasons that I bought this camera was because of the 4K capabilities. It also has 120 frames per second at 1080, which is really great for getting slow motion of birds or running, cars moving, anything like that. Another thing that I really like about the Canon systems in general, and especially these two cameras, is they have a touch screen on the back of the camera, which I have found very helpful and easy to reference. But it also has all the buttons on the camera that allow you to fully control the screen in a situation where it might be raining or it might not be sensing for some reason your finger on the screen as much. The Canon R6 also has the LED screen in the live viewfinder, so right when you look through the camera, you can immediately see what your image is going to look like. You can also set it that you can see your playback or your preview of your image after you have taken it so that you can adjust on the go without having to double check the back of the camera to do that. The continuous shooting on this camera is much faster than my previous camera. The R6 also has the capability to have a custom white balance by adjusting your own Kelvins within the camera. A couple more features that this camera has over the T7i is it has HDR mode in both photo and video. It has the ability to basically customize any function of any of the buttons on the camera body itself. One of the main differences between the T7i and the R6 is the fact that the T7i has an internal flash, whereas the R6 does not. However, with a professional camera, you're usually looking at purchasing your own lights and your own flashes. As a professional photographer, I bought the R6 because I needed to upgrade from the T7i to something that was more professional and had more technical capabilities. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like and the subscribe button, and we'll be seeing you again soon. Ow, I hit my elbow. Don't make me, please. What?